Okay. Hi, Cassie.
Hello.
Thanks for meeting up with me virtually. It's good to see you. It's been almost a year.
I know. Yeah, 10 months. Well, little
Yeah, I
less.
just wanted to check in with you about your experience. But I wanted to touch base too because you have two children about your first birth and just a little summary of how all that was and what led you to choose home birth for your second baby.
Yeah. So with my firstborn, she's now 8 years old, and and
This is totally comfortable and candid, and yeah,
yeah,
she can be upset if she wants.
I've always been interested in doing, having my babies outside of the hospital because I've never felt comfortable in a hospital. Really never spent much time in a hospital, and I just, how sterile and the smell, and it's not the way that I pictured having my babies. And so with my first birth, I tried to do it at the birth center in Santa Rosa, and ended up getting transferred to the hospital. So I wasn't able to have the birth how I envisioned it. And so when I got pregnant again, I really wanted to try for a home birth.
And can you tell me a little bit about like what conception was like? Not actually the day of, but like, was it planned? Was it kind of a surprise? What was that like?
So I was actually using the copper IUD. I had a pretty bad experience with it. I was having a lot of symptoms. I was really moody, I was depressed, and I was getting a lot of acne, and somehow I was able to link the two together. I got on a Facebook group that I figured all these other women are having the same symptoms. So I actually removed it, and that day I got pregnant. So it was it was a surprise, but I definitely wanted two children, so it was like an unplanned surprise.
Yeah, we sometimes will say like you need to like open the door to allow your next baby in, but you just had to like crack the window. She just squeezed it. She was ready. Cool. Do you recall like finding out you were pregnant and what that was like?
Yeah, so I took a test. I had missed my period because I'm really regular. So to the day most of the time. So when I didn't get my period, I was like, there's no way, I just took out the IUD because it was only like a week or two later. And so, when I found out, I was excited. My partner, he he was I wouldn't say excited. He already had 4 children, so he knew that we wanted to have one more, that he wasn't ready at the time.
Yeah. And what was the pregnancy like for you? Was it pretty smooth? Did you have any hiccups along the way?
Yeah, the pregnancy was really smooth. I did get morning sickness pretty bad, but other than that, it was pretty smooth.
She's like, I'm so sleepy.
She just learned the sign for water. Could you do the sign? Water?
Oh. I love baby sign. It's so helpful. So your pregnancy was pretty smooth. At what point in your pregnancy did you decide you wanted a home birth?
So at first I went to just a regular doctor, and just interacting with, I was at the birth center up here in Ukiah, and they were great, but you saw a different provider every time, and it just wasn't very personal. They kind of got you in and out, and I realized, okay, about halfway through my pregnancy, I was like, okay, I want to do a home birth. I want to do this and try and do it the way I always envisioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And your partner was always on board, or was that a hard sell, or what was that like for you?
His other children have been born. 2 of his other children had been born at home, so he was used to that. And then he did have 1 child in the hospital, so he really wanted a home birth as well.
That makes things so much easier when you don't have somebody you have to like convince.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Was there anybody else in your life who was a hard sell, or was everyone kind of on board? Did you tell people, or did you kind of keep it to yourself?
I told, obviously my parents, and they, I think in the back of their mind, they're a little worried just because, they're used to more conventional, hospitals and doctors, but they really didn't express it because they knew I'm going to do what I'm going to do anyway. So I think they just kind of accepted it. I did talk to a friend about it, and she kind of, was trying to put fear into me and tell me a story about her friend. And, I just didn't let that, bother me. I knew what I wanted to do, so.
Yeah, it was really sweet when I got the call from you, because I was your doula the first time around 8 years ago. And so to hear that you wanted a home birth and you wanted me to support you, it felt like, wow, this is fun. This is like full circle to do this again together.
I wanted you to be a part of my birth, whether it was a doula or midwife, because I had such a good experience with you in my past birth, that didn't go very well or didn't go as planned, and you were there really advocating for me. And I
stole your placenta from the hospital, right? Because they weren't going to give it to you.
Yeah, you stole my placenta, and they were trying to cut me to was it episiotomy or? And you didn't let that happen, and things. I was so out of it. I was in full labor, giving birth, and you were the voice that I wasn't able to be.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted you at my birth, but when I found out you're a midwife, I was like, perfect.
Yeah, and it's not like a typical area that I serve too, but I didn't even think twice. I was like, of course I'm coming. Yeah. Great. So take me to the end of your pregnancy and like realizing you're in labor. Was it start stop? Was it just like, this is on? Like, what was that going into labor like, and what was your labor like?
So I'd always heard that, your second child you have early or right away. So I was she was born on January 16th. So I was thinking I was around Christmas. I thought I was going to have the baby. But
she was due or born?
She was born on January 16th. But for some reason in my mind, I thought she was going to come early. So that last month was really long, and I think she was actually born like a week or 2 after her due date. So it was long. I just had to keep trusting that, my body will do it when it's ready. Because I'm part of a due date group online, and so all these women were getting induced, and I felt like the only one that was like going past 40 weeks. I just trusted in my body, and the last few weeks were just hard. I was having some back pain, and it just wasn't as comfortable. I got one of those bouncy balls and started bouncing on it, but I just kind of trusted the whole process, and that really helped. And then I started getting contractions, I want to say the night before. They were coming on lightly, and then when I woke up the next morning, they were just really light all day, and started getting stronger and stronger towards nighttime. And I didn't want you to get there too soon because I was, worried with the drive. I didn't want you to have to go home and like drive back. So I was trying to push it as long as possible. But then Jedi was like, if you don't call Sophia, I'm going to call her.
It was pretty rainy that night, yeah? if I
Yeah.
remember.
It actually snowed that morning.
That's right. The next morning it snowed.
Yeah. And so he made me call you because it was pretty hard to talk during the contractions at that point. And it was getting late. And so I'm glad I did because she was born pretty quickly after you got there. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and another fun note, I remembered you were pregnant at the same time as your dog.
Yeah. Yeah. We had just sold our last puppy like a week or two before I gave birth. So.
Yeah, I remember that was sweet to get to like watch them grow up, during our appointments.
Yeah.
So what was labor like? What was the actual like moment of birth like for you if you think back in those very first hours after?
I mean, I think the hardest part was the parts to get up to that transition before I started pushing. That when I look back, that's the most like pain I can remember. But then when I was ready to start pushing, I felt like there was almost like time to breathe. It gave me, because the contractions were like stacked up on each other so close, and it was so painful. There was no really time to get a breath in. But then once I moved past transition into the pushing stage, I was like, oh, okay, I can like breathe, and then, yeah, that was the hardest part. I would say it was maybe an hour and a half that was, pretty tough. But then when I got to the pushing, I had a fear in my mind from pushing with my previous daughter because she was, what is it, sunny side up?
The posterior.
Posterior. So I did have a fear around pushing, but since she was
transported during pushing with her.
I was transported during pushing, yeah, because I pushed for like 3 hours. I couldn't get her out. But with Jade, she was the right way. So compared to the last time, it was, like a walk in the park.
Yeah, and you were in the birth tub.
I was in the birth tub, and that helped so much. That really, I remember both births, the birth tub was just really, really, really relaxing and brought some comfort.
And is there any memory about like the actual moments of birth or like the moments right after she was born that you recall?
Right before birth, I remember she was, it felt like forever because I felt like I was waiting for the last contraction to come while she was like halfway in, halfway out. That just felt like a long time waiting. And then when she finally came out, I remember my daughter running in, and she had been in the other room. I thought she was sleeping, and she came in. She's like, "It's a baby."
Yeah. We thought she was sleeping the whole time. She was like just silently listening, waiting.
And that was a sweet moment. And I remember my dog coming up like during the contractions and comforting
me. Do you remember your placenta being born?
I do remember that. I wanted to get out of the tub. It was kind of taking a little longer than I wanted, but I think I delivered the placenta within 30 minutes of being born, if I can remember correctly. But it was just something I kind of just wanted to get over with and rest with my baby.
Like, I just want to be done at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Was there anything in those like first few hours postpartum that stood out to you, for better or worse, or what was that like?
I would say in the very beginning, because she was born around 2 a.m. and you're already so exhausted, and then it's kind of like you leave and you're just left with this baby, and Jedi was sleeping. I'm like, wait, what do I do? I'm tired. Now I have a baby at the time. So it's definitely an adjustment.
And what about the first few weeks postpartum? What was it like with her? How was she as a baby?
They were great. I really felt like I healed super fast. Like everything shrunk back really fast. The pain was minimal. I mean, the next day I was up, doing stuff and laundry, and there was no tearing or no real pain. I bought that spray, like the numbing spray, and I never even used it. So
yeah,
the recovery time was really, really fast. And my friends and everyone were super supportive. They brought food and meals, and so I just felt taken care of and loved.
good. Do you recall the middle of the night phone call in the early weeks?
Oh yes, that's right. I think I tried to block that out. Yeah, so she was just screaming and was inconsolable for hours. I want to say 5 hours. I think I called you after like 3 hours in the middle of the night. And what I'm thinking it is it just, she was hungry and my milk wasn't fully coming in, and she just wanted to nurse constantly. And I think I just didn't have enough food for her, and she was hungry is what I think. But
yeah, part of my thoughts were there's this way that we can like replay our past traumas as a way to like heal them. And I do recall with your first baby that there was this period in the hospital where all she did was scream.
yes.
And she couldn't even nurse. And, she was born by vacuum, and we ended up, I had no idea. I was a new doula, and so I think I went on some forums and asked around like any advice, and everyone was like cranial sacral chiro, cranial sacral chiro, cranial sacral chiro. And I was like, okay, like, and so I just Googled some people and asked them if they'd see a new baby who wouldn't stop crying. And you guys had to like sign against medical advice, did you, to leave? Or because they wanted like breastfeeding established before, but she just couldn't.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to that? Because it was very, at least for me, like not triggering of that experience, but very familiar. Like, oh, this is not that it's like playing out and it's like bound to happen again, but like it was something that you needed to heal from. So it was like giving you the opportunity almost.
Yeah, definitely. No, that was really hard, especially being my first born, is you have no idea. I'm like, oh wow, this is what having a baby is. They just scream constantly because I didn't know. And I remember the nurses at the hospital were, getting frustrated because they didn't really know what was wrong either. And then when you told us any advice, we're like, okay, let's do that, because we trusted you. And so we took her straight out of the hospital. I think the same, like afternoon, you had made us an appointment for the chiropractor as well as the cranial sacrum. And then after that, she was just a completely different baby. She latched on, was nursing, and she was just normal. She wasn't screaming and crying. So looking back, I think she was just in a lot of pain.
Yeah, and how can you eat if you're in pain?
Yeah.
And I remember my memory, if it's right, says that like all they were really offering you was breastfeeding support and like, baby Tylenol or something equivalent for like, and she would just scream until she, fell asleep, yeah, so it just like when she was having this screaming thing, I remember I like even got on the phone in the middle of the night with a chiropractor and was like, do we need to do this again? Like, what is happening? Like, because there was no trauma necessarily in her birth. Like, you caught your own baby. It was, us just witnessing, and, you and your partner just gave birth to her and picked her up. And, but birth just inherently can be traumatic and a lot of pressure. And so that was where my mind was going, like, oh, is this playing out again? But she never ended up, it was kind of like, oh, I think as we were planning it all, you were like, okay, she just fell asleep. Like, let me reach out if this like picks up again. And so we held off on it, and then it was just never needed.
Yeah. And then I think my milk came in that next day really strong, and then she was fine.
Yeah, she screamed it in.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, awesome. Do you have any takeaways from your birth experiences, like lessons learned, or gifts you feel like your children brought you through the experiences, or any advice for anyone listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just, trust your body and know that we're designed to have babies. Women's bodies are designed to have babies. And I feel like there's a lot of fear, and information that's fear-based in the whole subject of birthing. From my mind, as a child, you see all these crazy scenes on TV, or birth is scary,
Right.
and just not to fear it. And that's what I love about having you as my midwife, is you really didn't do much during the birth. You just let me and my body just do its thing, and you were there for support, and so that I felt comfortable, in case something were to go wrong and I needed you. But you just really let me birth on my own. You didn't tell me when to push, or like check me during the course of my labor.
Or
So,
even your pregnancy. I never checked you once.
no,
Not needed.
I think just to trust in your body, really, and not to fear birth.
Yeah. Great. Well, it's so great getting to chat with both of you. Thanks for making a debut, Jade.
You ate?
She's got this like curly little wisp in the front. It's so cute. Great. Well, thank you again, Cassie, and hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sophia.